But, Mark, let's move on. 11 through 20, and I got to say, if you're on podcast services, you're just listening all the way through. If you're on YouTube, welcome. Hello. This is the second segment of our mock draft. You can go ahead, check out the first one. I'm going to put it right above Mark, so you can go ahead and check that out. But, Mark, we're going to start with the order and with our pick. So I will let you start. Number 11, who are the Cleveland Browns taking?
Browns are going to go with Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle out of Mississippi State. Then we're going to go for the Colts. They're going to take Rashawn Gray, not Gary, defensive lineman out of Michigan. I really just wish his name was
finally got
Gary.
That one right.
If it was Gary, it'd be so much cooler. Raiders, via the Cowboys, are going to take Deontay Thompson, safety out of Alabama. Seahawks going to go for the defensive backs as well with Byron Murphy, cornerback out of Washington. Now, this name's going to sound familiar. The Falcons are going to take Josh Allen, the quarterback/edge.
Quarterback/edge.
Out of Kentucky this time. Now, I mentioned that there was some great names in the draft, and here's another one for the Ravens with, I honestly have no idea.
I'm going to say
it looks like Yodney is what it looks like to me.
Yodney.
Yodney, kind of like Rodney, I guess. Cajuste. Another name which might sound familiar for you if you watch Hard Knocks, the offensive tackle out of West Virginia. Then we got Eagles going with Brian Burns, another edge rusher from Florida State. Then we got the Dolphins going with Dalton Risner, offensive lineman out of Kansas State. Packers, Clelin Ferrell for defensive end out of Clemson. Devin White, the linebacker out of LSU, going to the Titans. And finally, the Bengals are going to draft Mack Wilson, linebacker out of, once again, Alabama.
Well, and we'll go right into mine. Starting off number 11, the Browns they took the quarterback last year. They're going to help him out this year. They're going to take Greg Little, offensive tackle from Ole Miss. Then the Colts, they're going to go cornerback because they desperately need one. They're going to go DeAndre Baker, the cornerback from Georgia. Then the Raiders, via the Cowboys, they took pass rusher for me in the first part of their pick, the number 1 overall pick. So they're going to go with Marquise Hollywood Brown, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Then the Seahawks, they are going to go with the last Clemson boy, I think, in the first round. They're going to go with Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle from Clemson. Then the Falcons, I'm going to have them do the same pick you did. Josh Allen, the outside linebacker from Kentucky. The Ravens, they're going to go with Dramont Jones, the defensive tackle from the Ohio State University. Then the Eagles, they will go Derek Brown, defensive tackle out of Auburn. The Dolphins, they will go Julian Love, the cornerback from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The Packers, in their first pick, they're going to go with Raekwon Davis, the defensive tackle from Alabama. And then the last 2 picks, the Titans, they'll go with Dalton Risner, the tackle from the Kansas State Thundercats. And then another Notre Dame Fighting Irish will round out my top 20 with 21, being the Bengals, who will take Tavon Clooney, the linebacker from Notre Dame. And really in this topic, Mark, we're going to look at 2 teams. And these are teams that both have multiple picks in the first round. The first one we're going to look at is the Oakland Raiders, where we have now in this mock draft gotten to 2 of them. We'll get to the last one in the third segment.
Although, honestly, it'll probably get spoiled in this segment.
It'll get spoiled here, but they do have the Bears pick, which right now sits at 25. Right now, early on, what do you think should be the Raiders' plan of attack? Because to me, it's pretty easy with number 1. The number 1 right now, you said you need a pass rusher. Nick Bosa will be there, barring any setbacks from his injury. You go at Nick Bosa, number 1, but what should be their plan of attack for the Cowboy and the Bears pick that they're going to have this year in the first round?
So as I've lost my internet connection, I'm now pulling this back up on my phone. But for me, it's pretty obvious that you need to address the pass rush for you. And really, you need to get some help in your defensive backs as well. You could use a wide receiver. You could really use anything when it comes to defense. This is a team that has a lot of needs because what are they doing? Blowing up the team. You got to kind of start over, and you can use anything. This is one of those times where you know what you get to do? BPA.
True.
You get to basically just draft the best player on the board
you can take your
at
Colton
any
Miller.
time. So I like them being able to go for pass rush. I like them being able to go for a shutdown corner. I would love for them to eventually, they haven't done it yet for my mock draft, be able to go and get themselves an Amari Cooper replacement, somebody for Derek Carr to throw the ball to. Any of that would be nice. Raiders are in a very, very fortunate situation where they can get some of the top players in multiple positions.
I also wonder, for me, I look at it and, I mean, this might spoil the position that I have them going with later, but for me, I look at it where one of these picks, if not both of them, the ones after the first one that they have, they might be able to be in a situation where either one of two situations. The one you said, take BPA, which, let's be honest, if they're taking BPA, to me, they're going to take maybe 3 defensive players in the first round and just completely load up on the defense. Like, they could have easily, with where we had guys placed out, they could have easily taken, all right, Nick Bosa number 1, there's our defensive line. Josh Allen in the second one, okay, there's our linebacker. And then with 25, go with the best cornerback or the best safety that's on the board and kind of hit all 3 levels of the defense.
Yeah.
But for me, I kind of look at it and go, after that pass rusher, because let's be completely honest, Khalil Mack should still be on this team. There's no reason why they should have traded him. They should have just paid him the money because he's worth it and they need a pass rush. But I look at it and I go, I feel like that first pick is going to be defensive end, Nick Bosa. And then after, I could see them being like, hey, we're not going to go BPA. That might be a reach like they did last year, which I believe you're in the same boat. I didn't like the Colton Miller pick.
Nope.
I didn't think it was very good. I thought it was a huge reach for getting that offensive tackle, especially when I had several offensive tackles ranked above him in the draft. But I feel like they could do that same thing where John Gruden may come in and go, all right, we got our pass rusher with the first pick. Now I'm going to go ahead and get a wide receiver here for Derek Carr to throw to. And then later on, I'm going to dip into the running backs, either a Bryce Love, either a Damian Harris, a David Montgomery, just one of the running backs that could be there to then, boom, we have a young running back, we have a young receiver. Our quarterback, we don't even know if they're sold on Derek Carr right now, but he's a quarterback at the moment. And I feel like this could be pass rush, offense for the Raiders in the first round of this draft.
I kind of feel that with this team, they've got such a talented quarterback in Derek Carr.
Do you think they'll move on from him, or do you think Gruden will stick with Derek Carr?
I think he likes Derek Carr.
Okay.
And I do think there's going to be a lot of defense for the Raiders in this one. I think that they are going to try and build that up because, you know, we've seen it so often that a strong defense recently has been kind of necessary for teams to go into to go far into the playoffs, despite us being in this great quarterback era. So they need to readdress that pass rush. They need to be able to stop opposing quarterbacks. They need competent players in this defensive side of the ball. And they can come back and get some offensive players, I think, a little bit later in this draft through free agency potentially or just next year because, you know, John Gruden's got 10 years. He is not going for a quick fix.
10 years.
And that's one of the reasons why I think they're going to focus on defense in this draft because they are not going to try and get a quick fix. They're not trying to get a new quarterback, a strong weapon, and just, here you go. Throw the ball all over everybody. They're going to try and slowly, methodically building this team. That's why they reach for Colton Miller because they believe he's going to be an instrumental part of that offensive line, such a crucial part to build. Look at what the Cowboys were able to do when they drafted offensive lineman after offensive lineman. They were able to have one of the most talented offensive lines in the entire NFL and leading a great team to having a great running game and a quarterback who's average to be made to look above average when he has such a successful team around him.
Yeah, and I mean, the Raiders, it'll still be interesting, too, with where their picks are still going to be. Because that first one that we talked about, their own pick, might be the first overall pick with how bad
it's a good
the
chance
Raiders
it will
are
be.
this year. But, like, because they own the next 2 picks, but they don't own where they're placed, it'll be interesting to see the Cowboys. Do they make a run for the playoff and that pick gets lower? Or do they kind of fizzle out and that pick stays the same or even sneaks into the top 10? And then with the Bears, right now, they lead the NFC North. That's why it's a 25th overall pick. But like this week, and we're going to pick this game, they have a big game against the Vikings. If the Vikings win, Bears and Vikings flip, and there's a chance, I mean, just between the Bears and the Vikings in the draft standings, if they flipped, that pick for the Raiders would go from 25 all the way up to 22. So, I mean, it's like, I'll ask you this.
Not a huge move, but it's something.
Not a huge move, but it's still a move up. I'll ask you this before we move on to the next team we're going to talk about in the Packers for this segment. Do you think what kind of a movement do you think we might see from these two picks? Could they get better for the Raiders? Do you think they're going to get worse for the Raiders, or kind of sit where they're at right now?
I can see the Cowboys kind of leading their way into kind of a mediocre type of end of this season.
So like late teens?
Yeah, I could see that definitely happening. I mean, Amari Cooper is helping out Dak Prescott a bit. The rest of that division's not looking as impressive as we all kind of expected at the beginning of this season. So there could be some mediocrity there. The Bears, I mean, they surprised everybody. Everyone was kind of thinking that they were going to just fall apart now that they're playing divisional games, and they dominated the Lions. Kind of let the Lions come back a little bit at the end, but overall they were dominating. Mitch Trubisky having his first or second best passing game, depending on what you want to say. So going into a Vikings team who's a very good team, I could see the two teams splitting that, and the Bears still have a couple of games that they should win and a few games that they probably should lose as well for the rest of their season. So I think that Bears pick stays right in that low 20s.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. With me, if that Bear pick does rise, it'll be more of like, for me, a 20, 21, 22, maybe like a 19 at the highest. The Cowboys, for me, I'm going to say it kind of stays the same. Maybe falls a little bit, but kind of stays in that teen area to where we're not going to have a huge shakeup with these picks for the Raiders. Let's move on into the second team we're going to look at, and that's the other team that has multiple picks in this first round. So the Green Bay Packers, they have multiple picks because they make a trade last year with the Saints. The Saints move up. They go ahead and get themselves a defensive tackle last year in Lattimore, I think it was, out of, I want to say it was USTA. And they get the Saints pick. So they have the Saints pick, which is right now 30 because the Saints are doing really well. And you have the Packers who have their pick at 19. Last year, the Packers went corner and got two of their cornerbacks. Do you see them going offense, defense? What are you thinking? Because both of us, with the 19th pick, have them going defensive line. You with the edge, me with a guy in the middle.
Yeah, and it's, to me, it's obvious there's a couple things that the Packers need, and they need to go into this draft thinking, Aaron Rodgers, he's 34 years old. We got to do everything we can to help him out. They need to do whatever is possible. Quite possibly that's part of it. The things they got to do, make this defense better. Can Aaron Rodgers, and I'm a Bears fan, so I'm hoping the answer is no, but can Aaron Rodgers please for once have a good defense? He's had average defenses. He's had slightly above average defenses and like one or two good defenses in his career. But really he's had below average defenses way too often. He needs something. He needs some help. And that's why I have him going with an edge rusher here with Clelin Ferrell. You know, plus part of the fact is that he's still there, and I think he's a great addition. It's hard to pass up on that case. You know, they were going to get guys to shore up by getting to these wide receivers, engaging the wide receivers, getting interceptions. They're going for the corners there. Now let's try and get to the quarterback. Let's try and make that a priority. And then later, this will be one I'll just go ahead and spoil. I have them going with a wide receiver because what else does Aaron Rodgers need? Wide receiver. And there's no running back that you're going to take right now in the first round.
Well, and I mean, the thing with the running back is, the thing that's interesting, and I know it's only one game. So trade deadline happens. They trade Ty Montgomery. Then they start the rookie. Well, yeah, the rookie this week. and he does amazing. And people are like, oh my God, they found the answer at running back. And part of it's like, well, it's only one game. Let's see what goes on. But at this point in time, it looks like maybe they don't need to focus on that running back. Wide receiver, though, is just something where it's like, get Aaron Rodgers some help. Even if it's like 2 guys later on, like one position you can look at is wide receiver. But also I wonder, and this depends on how he rises and falls, do the Packers with their later pick, they go defense early on, and then with that Saints pick, what if they go with a guy like Noah Fant? Because the Jimmy Graham experience has not been that good in Green Bay. Do they look at it and go, hey, it doesn't matter if it's tight end or receiver, we just got to get Aaron Rodgers a pass catcher. And do they look at it and go, hey, let's get this tight end because really Jimmy Graham hasn't been working out for us.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like Jimmy Graham has been a bust or anything for the Packers.
Yeah, it's not his fault.
I just think that I don't think they're going to give up on Jimmy Graham experiment that fast. That would be pretty quick. I think that they'll go for a wide receiver because Aaron Rodgers likes to sling it. He likes to throw it deep, and they want to get somebody potentially that can match that and can allow him to do that. At the very least, to be somebody who can clear out room for some other wide receivers to do that. I really can't imagine that they'll pass up a great wide receiver for the tight end.
Yeah, and I mean, the big one, too, that comes into their draft stock, too, is what we talked about last week with, are they going to get rid of Mike McCarthy? Is he going to stay? What's kind of the plan for this team? But what I will ask you kind of to end this segment before we move on into the last part is there any other team, 11 through 21, that we didn't talk about that you're looking at where it's like, you know what? At this point of depending on how their season can go, I'm going to be interested in, if they're in this range, I'm going to be interested for what they do in the draft.
Well, very interested in what the Eagles are going to do because nobody expected the Eagles to be in the middle of this draft. People were saying that they were going to be a 15-1 team potentially. So this is a surprise here for them to be such a middle ground team. And they're a team that didn't seem like they had tons of needs, but, maybe they go and they shore up the offensive line. Maybe they can go and try and get some more defensive players. They did have a nice trade for Golden Tate to get a better, a good player for the wide receivers, but then they didn't use them. When they played the Cowboys, where was Golden Tate? So it's going to be interesting to see what the Eagles do. They have quite a few options of what they can do.
Yeah, for me, it is the Seattle Seahawks. And it's not necessarily, they have to be in this range for it to be interesting. No matter where they land, top 10, 11 through 31, or 11 through 21, 22 through 32, I'm interested to see what they're going to do because one of the big things we've talked about beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year is the end of the LOB. The Legion of Boom is dead. That era is over. And you look at this draft, it is a defensive loaded draft to where the Seahawks can just look at it and go, all right, let's load up. Let's get a guy. Let's get in any part of the ball. And that's why I had him go Christian Wilkins because if they were a little later, they would have went cornerback. But, I mean, this is one where they could just throw a dart at the board and go, that guy.
Yeah.
That's the defensive guy that we want. Like, just have a board with all your guys, throw a dart at it, and that's the guy that they're going to take. They're the team that I look at of who are they going to go with because they need to kind of get this defense back up to where it once was and what we know it can be under Pete Carroll. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section about any of the picks. What do you think about the Raiders? What do you think about the Packers and their situation for the draft right now? And then also, what kind of a team in this range are you guys interested to see what their draft strategy is going to be the rest of this year, depending on how they do as well?